name is Nick Roosh. I'm the STEM Data and Research Librarian at FSU Libraries, as well as one of the planning team members for the Diverse Voices initiative. On behalf of the Diverse Voices planning team, I want to welcome all of you to our third Diverse Voices talk of the semester. As we get started, I wanted to remind everyone that out of respect for our speaker and fellow attendees, please keep your microphones muted during the presentation. We'll have time for questions and discussion at the end. Just a little bit about the Diverse Voices project. The Diverse Voices and FSU STEM project seeks to call attention to the challenges faced by diverse and underrepresented groups in STEM as they progress through their academic career. This program aims to engage the entire FSU community in conversations that highlights what it means to be a STEM scholar in terms of one's STEM identity. And this speaker series is part of that project, in which individual speakers are sharing their stories about what it means to them to be a STEM scholar. And with that, I am excited to introduce our speaker for today's talk, Dr. Jesusa Legaspi. Dr. Legaspi is a research entomologist at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Agricultural Research Service, Center for Medical, Agricultural, and Veterinary Entomology. Dr. Legaspi obtained her Ph.D. in entomology at Purdue University in Indiana, her M.Sc in Applied Entomology at the University of Newcastle-upon-Tyne in the United Kingdom, and Bachelor of Science in Biology at the University of the Philippines in Los Banos, Philippines. She is co-director of the Center for Biological Control and Courtesy Associate Professor at Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida. Her current research involves the use of sustainable technologies and natural control agents of insect pests in organic crops. Dr. Legaspi's research work experience includes working in international, national, and federal agencies, as well as state universities. Welcome, Dr. Legaspi.
Thank you very much, Nick. And I also would like to thank the organizers of this inaugural seminar series on diverse voices in STEM. Thank you for the invitation to speak. Kelly and Emily have all been very gracious to invite me here. Yes, you might be wondering, what is entomology? Entomology is the study of insects. So I've been working with various scientists, professors, people that are in the field of either identification of insects or controlling insects in both, national, international arenas. So I'll start a little bit with a brief biography. Nick has mentioned some, so I'll just go through that real quick, emphasize my research experience and how I got into the field of entomology, talk about a little bit of what I've accomplished with my work, and go later, as he mentioned, I'm co-director of the Center for Biological Control. So I'll talk a little bit about that because that one is right here, right next to Florida State University. So any of you that are interested, would like to know more about it, please feel free to contact me. Just type my name and you Google it and you'll see our website at USDA ARS, as well as at the Florida A&M University. So I won't go through all this because Nick has already mentioned it, but what I'll just say is, when I first started as a bachelor's in biology, my main reason was to go into medical school and be a medical doctor, but things turned out very differently. And I ended up studying entomology. And actually, the time it took me to get to my PhD was almost like I did go into medicine, but things happen for different reason, and I'll sort of go through this with you. I'll try to keep track of the time. I know that we'll try to keep it within time so some of you can ask questions. So in terms of my work experience, he mentioned about working for state, national and international agencies and universities. I did start out as a research assistant after I completed my bachelor's in biology. Fortunately, I was able to get a job for a project that was based in the Philippines, although it was funded by the UK government. And that was to do work on controlling insects in rice, because rice is a major crop in the Philippines. Excuse me, I have to drink. So let me go back. So from the very beginning, they were searching or looking for a local research person that could be trained to do research. And even during my interview, I was already informed that whoever they hired would be sent to the UK to study for a master's degree and come back and do research in the Philippines. So I did that. So this was a joint project between the national government in the Philippines, Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study, based again in Los Banos, and the International Rice Research Institute. So I did my master's, came back, and then I ended up working for IRRI, and many of the scientists there, senior scientists, were actually from overseas. So my boss was actually from the US. And so when I mentioned to him that I was interested in continuing on to study in the US, he helped me by providing me the information that eventually led me to obtaining a fellowship to study at Purdue University. And then after I graduated, then I was hired by USDA Agricultural Research Service. This is the scientific arm of USDA. Since I was not a US citizen, I could not be working too long for them. I was in a special program where USDA could hire non-US citizens temporarily. I ended up working for Texas A&M University and reached the associate professor level there, again in entomology. And finally, the work that I'm doing here in Tallahassee, Florida. So I've been here about 20 years now. And that was when, at the time, they were just really starting the Center for Biological Control. So in the 80s, where I'm sort of dating myself now, I did start off working in the field, in the rice fields in the Philippines, collecting data, weather data, insect samples, bringing them back to the lab and processing them. When I studied in England and had the opportunity to go on field trips and research sites, visits in England and Scotland, that gave me an idea of how it was like to do research in these national agencies, excuse me. And then for my master's thesis, I was able to request that I do my work at a research institute. So they arranged for me to work at the Rothamsted Experiment Station. And that was for 2 summers. And that was really very, very significant for me because it is a very famous research station. And this is where they discovered fertilizer. And the father of statistics is from this. If you've heard of the Fisher statistics, the scientists came from this. And it's a very old institute. I was living in a 400-year-old manor house. So it was very, very interesting. So I'll switch gears and talk about a bit of the work that I did. As I mentioned, I was hired at Texas A&M, so I was hired as a sugarcane and citrus entomologist based in Weslaco, which is at the south tip of Texas. So you can see here in the map, here is Texas in yellow, and we were located right at the tip on the border. We were just around 8 miles from Mexico. So this pest arrived in the 80s in the US from Mexico. It's called the Mexican rice borer, and it was causing a lot of damage and reducing yield in sugarcane in the lower Rio Grande Valley. This is where probably the last of the sugar mills was built here in South Texas. So this is the adult here. I hope you're seeing the arrow I'm pointing to. And then on the left, you'll see the larvae that bores inside the sugarcane stalk, produces its frass or its waste. And then once it becomes a pupa and ready to emerge as an adult, it makes these holes, the exit hole. So one of my interests has always been using natural control methods as much as possible, try to reduce the use of chemicals, which can be hazardous to the environment and to humans. So one of these is the use of what we call biological control agents. And this picture here shows the parasite. And it could be, you know, a larval parasite that attacks these. For example, the larva of the Mexican rice borer, which is inside the stalks, but they can still get in there and find that larvae, attack it, and then eventually kills the Mexican rice borer. At the time, you know, this picture shows they were doing a lot of spraying, but through the years, the growers have realized that the spraying really didn't work because the pest was inside those stalks. So they realized biological control would work, as well as using resistant varieties. So to do that research, I had to work closely with the Rio Grande Valley sugar growers, U.S. Department of Agriculture, ARS, or Agricultural Research Service, based right there. They're just next to each other. And this institute from Mexico, INIFAP, or it's the equivalent of the USDA ARS in Mexico. So we work together to find ways that we can control this pest. And I did use different methods, worked with plant breeders using conventional methods, or what they call transgenic, genetically engineered, but sugarcane. But I was really more interested in using biological control, which is using those parasites, for example, that I showed you. A lot of these invasive pests, they've come from other countries. So when they arrive here in the US, you know, they don't have the natural enemies or native insects over there. And so one thing we do is we will bring those native natural enemies from those countries and bring them to the US after we've done the proper quarantine screening. I've worked with nematodes, which are like wireworms or worms that attack the larvae. Pesticides is still something that we can't really avoid, but if we could use more environmentally friendly or sustainable ones would be better. Using pheromones, which is similar to like a perfume that females produce or the males produce to attract the pest. And we use the behavior of the insect to try to reduce the populations. And another is pathogens. In this sense, they're entomopathogens that there can be viruses or fungi that can attack the pests. So all of these is what's called integrated pest management, where you combine all these methods. Through the years, they have released parasites that were imported from Mexico and other countries. So we just show here some figures of parasites that were released at the lower Rio Grande Valley. And they could be larval parasites or egg parasites. And they have been very successful. And so the growers really don't spray any chemicals there. Out of all those that were released, I thought that one of these parasites called the Jalisco fly from Mexico showed real potential. So with a joint project with Mexico, we did some foreign exploration, or what we call classical biocontrol, where we go to those countries and search for them and bring them back to the US. So that's the Jalisco fly here. And again, working with US Department of Agriculture in Wesco, Texas A&M at College Station, where the quarantine facility was located. And again, INIFAP, based in Mexico City, and their other location in Guadalajara. We were able to go a few trips to collect for these fly. And this is the Ameca Valley in Guadalajara, near Guadalajara. So I brought a team here of scientists, people from the Texas A&M College Station rearing facility, as well as the technicians from the INIFAP that all traveled there so that we could collect and bring them back to the US. And these are just, again, some of the team members that were there. We made a few trips back and forth, and this is one of the technicians there working at that location. So out of all of that, we did do the biological studies and screening, and some releases were made, but it didn't really establish. By the time I left Texas A&M for Florida, they were not able to continue it, the project. So I'm going to switch gears here in from the Jalisco fly of Mexican against the Mexican rice borer to the whitefly, which is a major global pest, this sweet potato whitefly in vegetables and horticultural crops. So this is where the project I worked with when I was hired at USDA ARS, both in Texas and here in Florida. So the main pest is here, the sweet potato whitefly, and I'll talk more a little bit about that. Next would be like thrips and aphids. And I mentioned that there are good bugs, which we call the beneficial insects or natural enemies. And these are, you'd probably recognize them as lady beetles, stink bugs, but this one is the common minute pirate bug, and also parasites. There's two main ones, the Encarsia species and the Earthmaster species. And these parasites, they attack the larvae of the whitefly and then develop inside and then come out, which then eventually kills the whitefly. So just to give you an idea of how it looks like, again, here is the adult. And a high infestation would look like these, where the adults completely cover the underside of the leaf. When I was in Texas in the 90s, it got so bad that, it was in the news because people were seeing, all their windshields were covered with whitefly, or if somebody's jogging, they're inhaling the whitefly. And the same in next door to Georgia, it was all over the news a few years ago. So the kind of damage is that you can see here on the left bottom is it can devastate the crop. I had one time a crop in Quincy, Florida, and I left for Mexico for a couple of weeks, and I come back and the crop looked like this because mainly it was these whitefly adults carry a virus. And once it transmits that virus, just one whitefly, and that virus can then spread all over the plants. So it can cause this kind of damage where you practically cannot get any yield. This one on the right bottom are the immatures. So I couldn't find real up-to-date figures of crop losses, but even in the 90s, early 90s, they were already pretty high, especially here in the Southeast, especially California. As you know, it's probably one of the top growing states that grow a lot of the vegetables, followed by Florida. So you can see here the high number of crop loss due to this whitefly. And again, just like I did with the Mexican rice borer, I tried different control methods and worked with various scientists to try and find a way we could combine all these methods to control the whitefly. But what I'll talk to you about is mainly these, again, biological control, where we imported these beneficial insects from other countries. Usually we go to the countries of origin of the insect pest. And then more recently, I've been doing more of these cultural methods where we try to diversify the crops or the plantings around the target crop to try and attract the beneficial insects. And I'll talk more about this push-pull technology that I've been working on and manipulating the habitat by adding some companion plants. So for the whitefly in the 90s, I was able to lead a project to go to 5 Asian countries, Philippines, Thailand, Taiwan, Indonesia, and Malaysia. And it wasn't much money, but we were able to make a few trips and work with collaborators in those countries in their work with the scientists in their agencies to bring back these natural enemies. So the picture on the left shows some of my colleagues, actually my boss there on the left, and another scientist, and we were at the Asian Vegetable Research Development Center in Taiwan. And the one on the right was field collections we did, again, in a field crop of vegetables in Taiwan. So out of all these collections, we brought in 22 strains of parasites, 3 entomopathogens, and 3 predators. The entomopathogens are housed at the USDA ARS in Cornell University in Ithaca. The parasites were brought in through the quarantine facility in Mission, Texas, and the predators were identified and are housed at the museum, the USDA Systematics Museum in Washington, DC. So out of all these parasites that we brought in, we did some screening. They're brought in through APHIS, which is the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, and they do the implementation of the research that's done by ARS, as well as they're in charge of trying to keep the invasive pests from coming into the country. So we've done some quarantine screening where we tried to find which one out of all those that we brought back, which one was the best that we could release out in the field. Out of all these, I believe only one or two were found by APHIS to be promising, and I heard they were released in other states like California and Arizona. And here in this picture shows my student technician doing the screening in the greenhouse. And this is how they were rearing on the left, in cages where we have hibiscus plants that are where we rear the whitefly and eventually the parasites. And this was in Mission, Texas. I understand that a lot of that work, not only our group, but there were so many groups that were doing that. And so I understand that it has been very successful, although because this is such a global pest, it still is spreading, but from what I heard in Texas, they've been able to control it well. So when I got to Florida, when I worked here at in a satellite lab at Florida A&M University. I was interested in continuing the work with the whitefly, so I did some work on the biological control, landscape ecology, just doing some basic biology on insect pests of different vegetables such as cantaloupes, cucumbers, peppers, and the like. And this picture shows just the sunflower varieties that I tested to see if we could, what I had in mind is if these sunflowers could attract the beneficials, then these beneficial insects can then in turn attack the whiteflies that are on the target crop, for example, next to the sunflower. In this case, I was using peppers. Another study I was doing was just intercropping or just interplanting flowering plants with the crop. For example, down here on the right are sweet alyssum, the purple flowers are sweet alyssum interplanted with lettuce crops. And the reason I do this is because the predators, many of them, the adults don't really feed on the insect, but they feed on the nectar of the plants and the pollen. And then these adults will then lay their eggs on the, for example, lettuce, and then it's their larvae that would then attack the whitefly. So just a little background of the vegetables in Florida. It is a top crop grown here in Florida. It has a very high economic value. Florida is second in growing vegetables. And is ranked in the top 3 for tomato, bell peppers, and these other crops that you see here. So I mentioned that it is a worldwide pest. So this sweet potato whitefly, when I was working on it, since the early 90s, is this, you could see here with the red dots, they're distributed all over. But now it's this is the latest figures that I could see. March 2018, you could see that it has really spread all over the world. And it could be, places where they were not there before when I was working on it. Suddenly there are problems. And that may be due to global trade, just because of all the trade going on between the countries. It could be due to climate change. It's warming up. Many of the states up north are getting warmer. So, all of these may be contributing factors. So similar to what I did in Texas, I worked with various universities such as, again, Florida A&M, University of Florida, University of Georgia, and also work with the mostly smallholder organic growers, because here in North Florida, we don't really have the big commodity growers like they have in Texas or California. So, but we do have them more in the south of Florida. So I've been working closely with several of the growers. So I mentioned push-pull technology, and this is pretty much sort of the idea is that we push away the pest using volatiles that are coming out of certain plants. Some plants have very strong odors like mustard that I feel are released and repel the whitefly. As you know, some people or some plants that are being sold in the nurseries, such as citronella, and others are being sold as repellents against mosquitoes and other insect pests. So that's sort of the idea. So this picture shows a tomato crop intercropped with repellent plants. And the whitefly here, you can see, are then moving away from it and moving into another plant, which we call is the pull technology, where you pull in the whitefly onto other plants that are more attractive but are not cash crops or is not the target crop. So you could pull away those traps into another plant, like a trap plant or a trap crop, and then you could use methods such as using sticky traps or using other beneficial insects, in this case, the good bugs, that can then attack these insect pests. Eventually, the population will go down. So I call this the dual eco-based pest management, where we combine the strategy of push-pull technology and companion planting. We recently got funding from USDA Organic Research Extension Initiative in collaboration with University of Florida, University of Georgia, and Florida A&M University. So my part of the project was to test this push-pull technology. And in this case, I used the push component would be the use of citronella, garlic society, and lemongrass. And these are common plants you could buy in any nursery. And in this case, I used it in between tomato plants, as shown here in a screen house, because the project was mainly on enclosed structures such as high tunnels, so that we could grow vegetables and other plants year-round in Florida, even during the cold weather. So we did this in summer of 2019 at the FAMU Research and Extension Center at Quincy. And this shows a more close-up of how I interspersed the repellent plants between the tomato. And then I enhanced that by adding flowering plants, which we call the beneficial refuge plants. In this case, I used African basil, which you can see here in the corner. And then next to it is the marigold. Again, all of these you can easily purchase in nurseries. At the same time, I used a commercial attractant of beneficials called Predilure. And this is really basically methyl salicylate. There's been a lot of studies on this, so company produced. And again, I put them like in 4 corners of the screen house to attract the beneficials from the outside. Because although you think it's an enclosure, many of the insects still get inside of the enclosed structure. So in terms of pest numbers that we were monitoring throughout the season, we were really finding very low numbers of these whitefly, aphids, and thrips, which were the pests that we were seeing there. And at the same time, we were seeing those good bugs that I showed you earlier, such as the minute pirate bug and the parasites. So compared to numbers that we were seeing out in the field, outside those structures, or from other people's research as well, like in near Gainesville near UF, University of Florida, and the ones that were being done in University of Georgia in Tifton, the numbers we were seeing were really much lower than the numbers that they were seeing without using this push-pull technology and companion planting. So these are just some of the people that I worked with at Quincy, some of the students that I hired and technicians over there. So I'll switch gears now and talk about the Center for Biological Control. As I said, it was set up pretty much early on in 1998, I believe, before I even got here. And the main idea was to have a collaboration between USDA ARS, FAMU, which is a historically Black college, in USDA APHIS. So these were the 3 main partners. And this is pretty much really unique. There's no other center similar to this in a historically Black college or a minority serving institution. So it is well funded by the different institutes. And the purpose here is for us to be able to train the underrepresented students so then they can go on and work for federal government or state or university. So several scientists then were hired, including me. And although our center is based at the University of Florida campus, we are part of the satellite lab based at Florida A&M University. And my lab is really just next to the Center for Viticulture of FAMU, about 10 miles east of the FAMU campus. So these are the partners, and the entomology program runs that Center for Biological Control. Dr. Kanga is the director and I'm the co-director. And our programs, are both here domestically here in the US as well as international. And CBC, or the Center for Biocontrol, we do research, education, and outreach. So who do we serve? We serve, of course, the students, but we also serve growers nationwide. There is an emphasis in the Caribbean, mainly because, being in Florida and close to the Caribbean, we've been doing some offshore work over there. We deal mainly with the small farms, smallholders, organic growers, and of course, the entomology student. So since then, they've put in the resources for us to do the work. And this is, as I mentioned, just some of the students and staff in the program. The picture on the right, every year, the pest control industry have a workshop, and FAMU has been organizing this continuing education workshop for the pest control industries here in this area, from Florida, Alabama, all the way to Mississippi, Virginia. And they've been, for many years, providing scholarships to the entomology students. And this workshop, it's been going on for over 40 years. I think we're on our 44th year. We do a lot of international work. These are just some of the countries that we've, or scientists, the countries where we've had visitors or scientists that have come here, or we've gone there and visited. For example, here on the left, Dr. Taylor, the dean, went to China. On the right, I spent 2 weeks in Brazil, funded by the Ministry of Education there in their international programs. And I had a couple of PhD students that worked in my lab here. And this, one of them, M.Sc here on the right, it was one of the PhD students. USDA ARS has overseas labs. One of them is Argentina. So you can see here a group working on foreign exploration for cactus moth. And one of the scientists based here was working on that. And USDA ARS has other overseas labs, for example, in China, Australia, and France. And here, there was some work done in Haiti by Dr. Kanga. And we have several students that have come from Haiti. And currently, we have Haiti students too. We've also hosted several Norman Borlaug Fellows. These are fellows from other countries that come to the US, funded by the USDA Foreign Agriculture Service, to come and work for 3 months with faculty from universities here in the US. So FAMU has hosted Borlaug Fellows from Jordan, South Africa, Zambia. And we're expecting one this summer. He's coming from Indonesia. And they're usually from the universities there, or working for their national agencies. And Norman Borlaug Fellowship is named after the father of the Green Revolution. So USDA has been providing these fellowships. I've done some work on cacao pest management. In 2017, I received public scientist funding, or a travel grant, from the Department of Science and Technology in the Philippines. And they give this to US scientists who are of Philippine descent to work with their faculty there in the Philippines and do research. So I was hosted by a faculty from De La Salle University, and the project was to try to control the cacao pod borer. For those of you who are not familiar with cacao or cocoa, This is the cacao tree, and this is where chocolate comes from. So there are pods here that you can see here, and inside the pods are the seeds that are dried outside, outdoors, and from these seeds, then they're crushed to become, your cocoa powder, your cocoa bits, and that's how they make. That's how you eat your chocolate that are then exported to the different countries. This is just some of the activities I did at the De La Salle University, where I worked with the faculty here on developing a diet for these cacao pod borer and also looking at their traps. I'll go a little faster now because I'm keeping track of the time. So a lot of the work we do, again, as I mentioned, part of the reason we're here is for student training. So these are just some of the students that have been trained in our labs. And they come from different fields. They're not just entomology. They come from agribusiness, pharmacy. I've had a student in my lab out of high school who worked in my lab for 5 years until she graduated with her nursing degree. That's Elizabeth here. And they get experience with field work, laboratory, greenhouse, and all that. Here are just some of them. Also, we worked, as I mentioned, this is a Turkey Hill farm, which is just 5 miles here from Florida A&M. They learn about preparing the land and crop production. And here on the right is one of the Norman Borlaug Fellows from Zambia, where we did some field collections at the Belglade. The students also are involved with outreach activities. So we try to reach out to the community. So, and it's done through like the FAMU STEM Day, FAMU Annual Grape Harvest Festival, career fairs, and just more recently, the Tallahassee Science Festival. And because of all that training and work, hard work done by the students, they've been winning awards. So our students are bachelor's, master's, and there's a joint PhD with the University of Florida. So Warrell here is a master's in the center. He's a master's graduate, but contingent on his PhD with the joint PhD program. Julius here on the left, in the bottom, he was a master's student that continued on to do a PhD at Purdue University, and he's now the senior diversity manager of their graduate program at the agriculture, I think their agriculture program. So these students have gone on and moved on, have continued on to do their PhDs. For example, here, Sandra Wheeler went on and did her PhD at Penn State University. Latasha here on the right bottom, she's now adjunct faculty at TCC. So yeah, I think we have been very successful in training the students. And the faculty also have received awards. For example, in 2010, we received the Friends of IPM team from the award from the Southern Region IPM. Yours truly received the Excellence in IPM from the Entomological Society of America, and below here is Jermaine, who received an award in ARD, which is the biennial meeting of the Association of the HBCUs, or historically Black colleges. And Jermaine is now doing his PhD at University of Georgia. Other awards, just more recently, Alex Orfinger here, he received the 2021 Best Oral Presentation by a PhD student. And then Christine in the middle, she's an undergrad student now doing a master's in the program. And again, yours truly received the Achievement in Extension from the Florida Entomological Society. Just this year, we were informed we received the Award of Recognition in the Integrated Pest Management Team given by the International IPM Symposium. And because of the pandemic, they didn't have it this year, but next year it's going to be presented in Denver, Colorado. So this is just some of the staff and faculty, scientists from both ARS and FAMU. And some of the Borlaug fellows, we had like Isabel here, it's from South Africa. We have a Chinese visitor, a student, PhD student from China, and Kennedy again from Zambia. What we're hoping, looking ahead after, over, as I mentioned, 20 years of the Center for Biocontrol being, successful and achieving those accomplishments, we're hoping USDA will help or provide a building for us. And we've worked with architects to, and this is one of the renderings of the architect for a building on campus for the Center for Biological Control. So in my title, I did say that I was going to talk about some lessons learned. So through the years, some of the lessons I've learned was just be open to opportunities or changes. You may have had a roadmap that, may not be getting to the direction that you were hoping for, but just be aware that it can be different from what you had in mind, and just be open. Second is just work hard, learn those skills, especially soft skills, communicate, collaborate, and volunteer. Be resourceful. If there's something that you couldn't work on, don't be afraid to ask for help. Find good mentors. And I think I've been very successful in having had, I was successful because I've had very good mentors, as well as support from family and friends, and having that networking opportunities. And as you can see, we've done a lot of international work. So it's really important to be respectful and appreciate different perspectives, different cultures, ideas, and backgrounds. Be adaptable and flexible. Go outside your comfort zone. If it's something that you've never been familiar with, just go ahead and do it. But I think most important is just be mindful of work-life balance. I've always prioritized family, your health, especially now. I'm getting on with my through the years, and then your friends. So that having that support is really important. There's so many people that I have to acknowledge. Obviously, Family Center for Biocontrol, USDA, ARS, the different collaborators from the different universities, as well as the funding sources that I've been very fortunate to get through extramural grants that has allowed me to do the research that I've been able to do. So I'll stop there, and if there's time, then I'll try to answer your questions. Thank you for your attention.